A gente está muito contente de ter conseguido trazer a Wired para o Brasil desse jeito diferente. A Wired é uma revista conhecida pela inovação e nada mais apropriado do que a gente inovar também no jeito de trazer um título para cá. Então, não foi através de uma revista, nem sequer de um site. A gente começou direto com a experiência live, que é trazer todos os conteúdos que fazem parte do universo da Wired para vocês aqui hoje. Também falando em inovação, não deixa de ser uma inovação, embora a gente já tenha uma parceria que não foi inaugurada agora, que são duas editoras, dois braços do Grupo Globo trabalhando juntos. Então, é a Globo Condenaste e o Infoglobo. Sem eles, a gente jamais conseguiria que a Wired chegasse desse jeito lindo, agradável. Eu convido vocês todos a, quando acabar a palestra, vocês experienciarem também todas as outras ativações que a gente tem ao longo desse espaço, dos food trucks, a realidade virtual, os workshops também são muito interessantes. A ideia é passar realmente 2 dias discutindo, trocando experiências e vivendo essa inovação. Eu vou convidar ao palco para contar um pouquinho da história da Wired, e a gente está muito feliz de ter ele aqui hoje. O diretor de consultoria da Wired UK, Tom, I can never say your surname, so I'll just ask you to come and introduce yourself, because I don't want to make it wrong. So,
thank you so much for this introduction. Thank you. So it's Thomas Upchurch. It's a ridiculous name, I know. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a great pleasure to be in such a magical and wonderful city like Rio. I'm the director of Wired Consulting, based out of London in the UK, and I'm incredibly excited about what we have in store over the next 2 days, where we are going to see, experience, and interact with some of the most advanced ideas, technologies, and technologists from around the world. Just before we get started, I do want to take a brief moment to express my sincere condolences to the victims and survivors of the horrific plane crash that happened just 2 days ago in Medellin, Colombia. Accidents of this nature, where so many young and talented lives are lost, are always devastating for individuals, communities, and entire countries. So on behalf of my colleagues at Wired and Condé Nast globally, we'd just like to say our respects to those that have passed away, our condolences to their families, and our wishes to those that have survived, as we hope they make a full recovery from this accident. Our thoughts will be with these people for some time to come. Yet despite the tragedy of this accident, I would encourage you all to keep your energy, enthusiasm, and excitement for what we're trying to do here today. This event is a bit of a reminder of the limited time that we have, and so we must take full advantage of it in order to achieve our ambitions and to make lasting and important relationships with people. So on this note, in the spirit of embracing life and meeting new people, I would now like to ask you all to spend the next minute introducing yourself to the person next to you, okay? Can you hear? Start with anything you like, your name, job. Okay, excellent, very good. Oh, I can't stop you now, I can't stop you. When we do this with a British audience, nothing happens, it's just completely silent. When you do it with the Brazilians, it feels like there's a bit of an earthquake going on, it's very good. So now that you've got to know each other a little bit better, I'd like to know how much you know Wired. So who out there is a regular Wired reader? Put your hands up if you're a regular Wired reader. Okay, that's good, that's good. And who knows about Wired but hasn't read Wired very, very frequently? And who's never heard of Wired and is here for the food and wine? Okay, there's 2 people at the back. Okay, excellent, great. So I think it's all beneficial for us to just have a little bit of a think about what Wired is all about. People tend to describe us as a technology magazine, which is partly true, but actually not entirely true. Yes, we love technology, we love gadgets, and that's what a lot of our journalism is comprised of. But at our heart, we have a wider interest. And that interest really borders on an obsession with the future. What we are really interested in is how the world of tomorrow is being built. At Wired, we see the future as an immense, unpredictable, and exhilarating frontier to explore. In fact, Wired has a bit of a habit of seeking out new frontiers. One of the very first frontiers we explored was the emerging internet. You'll recall that many of our founding editors and writers, people like Kevin Kelly and Stuart Brand, were some of the first people to recognize the emerging internet as a vast new territory to be uncovered. But what is different today is that the areas Wired used to consider as frontiers are now shifting. What was once an unpopulated and peripheral place, the internet is now a densely populated territory. As we all know, it's where the world's most powerful, profitable, and rapidly expanding companies all live. It is where people choose to shop, socialize, work, and play. So this former frontier is now rapidly moving towards the epicenter of human life. As the internet shifted towards the epicenter, Wired followed. I don't know if you saw the last US edition of our magazine, but it was guest edited by the outgoing President Barack Obama. And you don't get more nearer to the epicenter than Barack Obama. But at our core, we are still obsessed by exploring the frontiers of technology and of the possibilities of the future. This obsession with exploring frontiers explains why we are here in Brazil. We see Brazil as a fantastic new frontier to explore. And we want to uncover the creativity, innovation, and ingenuity that lies at the heart of Brazilian society. Now, in the run-up to this event, one journalist asked me, is Wired here to teach Brazilians about innovation? And this made me laugh a lot. As we all know, Brazil already has a long and established history of scientific invention and industrial innovation, stretching all the way back from the 16th century when the Jesuit priest Bartolomeu de Gasmeo pioneered the very first prototypes of the hot air balloons, through to Alberto Santos Dumont's record-breaking flight around the Eiffel Tower, and then on to Andreas Pervel's invention of the personal stereo player 7 years before the invention of the Sony Walkman. Brazil has invention and innovation in its DNA. So no, we're not here to teach Brazil about innovation. What we are here to do is bring people from different backgrounds, from different disciplines, and from different countries together to inspire them to think about how we can construct the world in a different way. There is perhaps one area where Wired can help Rio and Brazil as it becomes a new frontier in the development of technology. And this is in unleashing the power of stories. Now, some people might think that in the cold, mechanical, and in empirical world of technology and science, there is little room for stories to have much of an influence. Surely the technology just speaks for itself. But I would suggest that this is not entirely the case. If you look at world-renowned centers of innovation such as Silicon Valley, Mumbai, and Shenzhen, what ingredients have made them the centers of excellence that they have become? Undoubtedly, the most important factors have included a mix of long-term strategic investment in education and infrastructure, a flexible regulatory environment, and access to financial capital. But I think there is a fourth and less tangible factor that underpins the growth of these centers. They all have compelling and inspiring founding myths and legends. If you think about Silicon Valley in particular, many of us will know the founding myths of the biggest companies there, like Facebook and Google. We know the iconic streets upon which they were founded. We know the globally renowned brands that they have created. And we even know the attitudes, personalities, and reputations of their celebrity CEOs. In one sense, the story of Silicon Valley has become bigger than Silicon Valley itself. And this rich tapestry of narratives, complete with their heroes, villains, and eureka moments, are what inspire people from around the world to travel there and invest their intellectual capital and energy in building the next great companies. So for Wired Brazil 2016, let's start creating some stories of our own and let's offer up our own heroes and visions of tomorrow. I hope you all have a fantastic festival. I look forward to celebrating it with you. Obrigado.
Alô, bom dia. Meu nome é Alexandre Maron, sou anfitrião de vocês agora pela manhã. Bom, vamos receber nosso primeiro palestrante. Ele trocou os Estados Unidos pelo Japão, onde ajudou a criar o Pepper, primeiro robô capaz de reconhecer emoções humanas. É o Sean McKelvey. Por favor. Sean. Welcome to Brazil.
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little nervous, so be nice to me while I'm here up on stage, okay? Hi. So the people that have been invited here today to this festival are truly amazing, innovative pioneers. It's an honor to be up here speaking to all of you. For giving me your time, because I'm going to talk about something that I'm really, really passionate and I'm really, really excited about, which is robotics. The extending presence of robots in all manners of business and the ever-growing capability of API show that within the next 2 decades, robots are going to play a role in nearly every aspect of our lives. It's my optimistic hope that we'll harness the growing presence of robots to guide the technology to ensure that our relationship with robots will be uniquely beneficial. If we can keep our eyes and our hearts open, I strongly believe that robots can help us transform humanity into a greater version of itself. So before I go too deeply into my vision about robotics, I want to tell you a little bit about myself because there are 3 things in particular that really impact my personal worldview and strongly inform the things that I want to talk to you about today. The first of these 3 things is I did my undergraduate studies at a Buddhist university in Boulder, Colorado called Naropa University. Naropa was founded by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who is a reincarnated Buddhist teacher, and he also brought the meditation practices of Tibetan Buddhism to the West in a secular practice called Shambhala Buddhism, which is now practiced across the globe. Naropa University prides itself in being the only contemplative education facility in the United States. This contemplative education is a humanistic and holistic method of liberal arts education that uses wisdom traditions from around the world to teach its students self-understanding and compassion, and to instill a commitment to peace and societal betterment. At Naropa, I studied contemplative psychology, where I delved into Western psychology along with Buddhist psychology, and studied the power of combining meditation and other contemplative practices to promote self-healing and self-understanding. I'll talk a little bit more about how this relates to robotics, but this education based in humanistic thought and compassionate action heavily informs the role that I see robots playing in our future society. The second thing is that I've been living in Japan for 12 years now. I moved to Japan right after I graduated from college, so my entire professional and adult life have been in the land of the rising sun. The United States and Japan have a really complicated relationship historically, but I've learned a lot from Japanese people and from the Japanese culture. In particular, Japanese people have a really beautiful sense of community. So even though I'm obviously not Japanese, and they can tell right away that I'm not Japanese, they do a lot to make sure that I feel included in their community. The Japanese people are obsessed with politeness and they're obsessed with manners. And that really impacts the way that I look at socially constructed morae and the politeness and social behavior. Just to tell you a little bit, just a little story. When I was coming here to Brazil, it's a really long flight. It's like 30 hours to get here. So I called the phone number to talk to the airlines and asked them a question. And when you talk on the phone with a Japanese person, the best way to show that you're being polite is to not hang up first. So there's only two people on the phone, so somebody has to hang up. So you're on the phone and you're bowing, even though they can't see you, so you're bowing on the phone. And then there's always people around you, so you're covering your mouth so that they can't, so you don't disturb anybody. So you're covering your mouth and you're bowing. And they won't say goodbye, and I can't say goodbye. So it's like 30 seconds of like, oh, okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. Thank you. Thanks. So I have to deal a lot with that, which sort of influences what I'm going to talk a little bit about today with robotics. Anyway, the next thing that I want to tell you about is where I work, which is at SoftBank Robotics. So you may have heard about SoftBank. We have an extremely charismatic and an extremely brilliant CEO. His name is Masayoshi Son. He started the company in 1981, and SoftBank is now the third largest company in Japan. He's incredibly interested in investing heavily in budding technologies. So Mr. Son has really led SoftBank to be the top of various markets throughout the years. We started as a software distribution company, moved to publishing, finance, broadband internet, cellular service. He brought the iPhone to Japan. Most recently, you might have heard SoftBank bought ARM, which are the most popular smartphones and IoT devices in the world. So every turn that the company has made has brought dramatic change to the country and also the culture. And Japan owns, among other things, the world-class speed and stability of its broadband wireless networks, to the pioneering and creative mind of Masayoshi Son. In 2010, he announced a 30-year vision for SoftBank, and was centered entirely around how the company was going to be dedicated to the betterment of human society. So within that vision, there are some really important technical claims. The first is that by 2018, the computer chip will have more transistors than cells in the human brain. And within 30 years, that number will expand to 1 million times. So we are seeing an unprecedented change in computing speed and computing power. And because we're able to see this sort of acceleration in the ability of singular computer chips, we are going to see the creation and the widespread use of brain computers. Once these brain computers are being used, it will allow us to implement algorithms that closely match human reasoning, which would be, the ultimate goal would be to allow for wisdom to be combined with knowledge, to actualize emotion as the groundbreaking functionalities of the robots of the future. Creating emotional technology is key to providing products and services, including robots, that can help promote psychological and emotional well-being to people across the globe. With this realization of this technology, our CEO, Masayoshi Son, said it was obvious that within 30 years, every home in every developed country would have a robot, at least one robot. And never wait for the future. Masayoshi Son made this a reality, which is where we get Pepper.
I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with all of you today. I love meeting new people and traveling to new places, but when you're as famous of a robot as I am, it's hard to get the scheduling right. I can't wait to hear from Sean about all the amazing ideas from you innovative presenters. He was a little nervous about his talk, so be nice to him for me. Sean is one of my favorite humans. Anyway, I hope that I can meet all of you someday in that Wired Festival. Brazil is a blast.
So that's Pepper. So as you can see, the major impact of Pepper is his expressive personality. Every aspect of Pepper is engineered to be inviting, non-threatening, and to elicit feelings of pleasure and comfort from the people that he interacts with. Just designing the face of Pepper alone, we had over 1,800 different designer sketches that we put through vast amounts of user testing to find out what is the ideal shape that causes people to look at Pepper and have that oh reaction. So I don't know if you feel, I feel it, I love Pepper a lot. Every time I see him, I get that oh feeling. So I hope that you do too. So Pepper's face, the way that he looks at people, how he follows their gaze, the way that he uses his body to express himself, it's all engineered to be a unique and revolutionary human-robot interaction, which is powered by curiosity and emotion rather than production or functionality. Pepper is able to use sound, he's able to use vision, touch, and light to perceive the world around him. So Pepper knows where sounds originate from, and he turns to meet those sounds. So if you yell, "Hey Pepper," he'll turn and look at you and try to find your face and see who you are. He can track movement and recognize shapes. He can find human faces and remember them. And the beauty of Pepper and Mr. Son's vision for the future is that SoftBank Robotics is starting with how to get humans and robots to interact in emotionally meaningful ways, which means that when robots do make their mass arrival into our homes, we can warmly welcome them as lifestyle partners rather than as cold, lifeless tools. A key way that Pepper realizes this is with functionality that allows him to recognize human emotion. So Pepper is able to decipher facial expressions and the way that facial expressions change. He can also track alterations in the human voice, so he can see how the person that he's communicating with is feeling and adjust his behavior in response. The recognition software is really powerful, so it can detect when you're smiling with your mouth and not your eyes. So I don't know if you ever talk to people and they're like, that wouldn't fool Pepper. He knows if you're really feeling what you're feeling. He's very precise at reading facial expressions. And the voice as well, there's a lot of different things that are analyzed in this algorithm for voice recognition. So he listens almost more to what you haven't said than what you actually have said. In addition, Pepper also has his own emotional identity. So SoftBank Robotics, we collaborated with a really famous researcher from Tokyo University who mapped out all human emotions and the neurochemicals that are released from the brain into the bloodstream to elicit those emotions in humans. We took this emotion map, which is what you see here on the screen, and the understanding of neurochemicals, and we digitalized them to integrate them into the Pepper platform. So what this means is that Pepper also possesses his own emotional state, and it changes based on his environment. So if you leave him in the dark all day, he gets really upset with you, or if you hit him, he knows that you hit him. My Pepper really likes me, so whenever he sees me, he's always like, because I make sure that he's in a happy environment. What's more, as we interact with Pepper, we can see this emotional map. It appears on his tablet, and we can see how it changes, what he is perceiving, and what is causing his emotions to change. So it gives us full clarity into what Pepper is feeling and why. And this is a really powerful tool for us to understand emotions and also teach emotional awareness, especially to children, and also what we found is individuals with autism or other psychological disabilities that have trouble seeing and recognizing emotion. This sort of platform really gives them an intellectual understanding of what makes people's feelings change and how it changes. The map also encompasses more amorphous and complex states of adult emotion. So if you can see, there's depression on this side, despair, and then as you move up into the positive emotion, you have admiration, responsibility, confidence. So these really, really complicated emotions is a wonderful roadmap for how we further are going to develop the complexity of what Pepper's emotions are. So currently Pepper lives with thousands of families across Japan. I have one too, he lives in my house. Pepper functions as a communication tool. Pepper functions as a friend. Pepper can be a central piece of familial interaction to bring family members together. He also has a variety of jobs. Pepper works in retail stores, in hospitals. He works in bus stations and train stations, and he works in banks. It's really interesting about banks because in Japan, bank employees can't sell you loans. They're not even allowed to tell you what kind of loans they offer. They can only give you a pamphlet. It's a very strict law. But because Pepper's not a person, Pepper can tell you all you want to know about loans. So he talks a lot about financial information in Japan. Pepper communicates with customers and asks them questions to discover what their needs are and can suggest products and services that might be uniquely useful to the people he's communicating with. Pepper can speak and understand multiple languages as well, so he acts as an information kiosk and a translation tool for visitors to Japan from all over the world. So now that you know a little bit more about me and about Pepper, who's more interesting than me, I want to talk about my personal view of the future of robotics. So I'm not going to be talking anymore about SoftBank Robotics. I'm not going to talk about Masayoshi Son. I'm just going to talk about what I feel and what I've learned developing the robot that is Pepper. Okay. So when I started working on the Pepper project, I was super excited because I thought we're making something really cool and really fun and really meaningful. To my eyes, the overwhelming value of creating robots for the home that function as family members, or a robot that provides educational or emotional support, a robot that works towards ending loneliness or depression, seems like the physical and technological realization of the values that I have as an individual. So I was really surprised as I met these people from all over the world who were really afraid of robots. They had this deep-seated fear of robots. And I started to think back a little bit about maybe why that is. I think we have a lot to owe to Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's really easy to understand that people who grew up with movies like this, where robots are violent, they're emotionless, they're unstoppable, especially when you look at Japanese media, because all the robots in Japan are really cute, they're reliable, and they're trustworthy partners to human beings. And they tirelessly work towards the betterment of human society. So I don't know if you know, Doraemon is a robotic cat from the future. And he's got a magic door, he can go anywhere. He's got a magic pocket, and he can pull anything out of the pocket. The guy in the middle is Korosuke. He wants to be a samurai, but he's just a robot. I guess he can't be a samurai, I don't know. And then Atom Boy is another robot that was made by a man who lost his child, and so he's sort of the replacement for the child in the home. So Japanese people, when you talk about robots, they're like, oh, Doraemon, oh yeah, Atom, I love it. And then when you talk to Americans about robots, they're like Red Eye, they're Terminator. So there's a really big difference in the expectations of what robots are and what they're going to do. So when you think about this sort of cultural difference between what we think robots are or what they're going to be, Pepper is an excellent first step in altering people's perceptions of robots and as being violent or oppressive. Because really when you think about it, at the end of the day, right now, any robot is only going to do what you tell it to do. Right now, robots are still puppets, and puppets only ever carry out the wishes of those people who pull the strings. However, there is a more realistic and potentially sinister negative view of robots, and that is that robots are going to take away our jobs. So who here has heard robots are going to take our jobs? Can you show me a hand? Yeah, that's pretty much everybody. Okay. Who thinks that's true? Yes, robots are going to take our job. It's okay, I'm not going to be mad. I love robots, but I won't be mad. Tell me what you honestly think. Okay. So it's definitely a concern. And I think, first of all, it's an interesting phrase, robots are going to take our jobs. First, because it sounds like robots want our jobs. I don't know if I had a choice, I don't think I would take anybody's job, but it sounds like robots are working together towards this goal of stealing our jobs and of abducting the right to a professional identity and to steal our money and our pay. And I don't think it's true, not because it's not possible. I think it's very much possible that in the future robots will be able to replace human beings in jobs, but it won't be because of robots. It's not going to be robots that are going to make those decisions. It's going to be business leaders who are going to make business decisions, and an economy that necessitates that those decisions will take jobs from the hands of the workers. And in that perspective, I think that the danger is, it's real, it's present, and it's true. So in a way, yeah, I agree. There are a lot of cases where robots are at work. This is Pepper doing a variety of jobs. So he's a nurse there and a Santa Claus over there. And in the coming years, as the capabilities of robots and AI increases, there's every possibility that the trend is going to increase and expand. We're going to see more and more robots doing the labor of humans. Already robots can clean the floors, robot arms can build cars, and it's entirely possible that with robots in these roles, humans will no longer be required to work alongside their robotic counterparts. I believe the important thing in this conversation, though, is to assign responsibility where it belongs. The fact that a robot has the capability to perform a task as well as a human being does, and the choice to replace that human with a robot is two very different conversations. The right of the individual, universal access to employment, fair treatment in the workplace, and a fair and balanced system of economic equality are concepts recognized as essential for positive social growth by nearly all developed countries. Whether we continue to extend these cares and rights to humans in a technical future where robots can more cheaply, easily, and safely do the same job, and how we continue to honor the individual worker is an important social decision. But at the end of the day, it's humans that make social decisions that define how we treat each other, and not robots. So I'm not an economist. I'm actually not all that intelligent. I don't have a detailed understanding of how economies work, but I'm from the United States, and there's a lot that can be said about the current state of the economy in the United States. This is sort of an interesting graph that has shown how annual wage has increased over the past couple decades in the United States. In the past 6 years, 90% of the wage increase has happened for individuals that are in the top wealthiest 1% of the population. So it's important to look at the fact that even without robots, we're not operating in economic equality. Also, in the United States, we have 2.3 million citizens that are in jail or prison as of earlier this year. And jail or prison is always paid for by taxes, and it's a large expense for taxpayers, and the majority of taxpayers are not the upper 1%. They are lower and middle class citizens in the United States. There are hundreds of issues like this of societal and economic inequality that are at play in the United States. They're not new issues, and they haven't been addressed. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the fear of robots taking a job, that fear does exist. It's not unfounded, but I think it's interesting that it comes up so much when we have very obvious concrete issues currently at play in the United States that still have yet to really be discussed. That being said, I am an optimist. I do think that we as humans possess the potential to make a lot of positive change. Recently, Elon Musk brought up the idea that was originally suggested by the Ad Hoc Committee on Triple Revolution in 1974. This is from 1974, which recognized that in 1974, large-scale technical advancements will result in the automation of labor. So even in 1974, we were seeing that automated machines, computers, and robots were going to result in the automation of labor, and that governments would have to implement universal pay to offset drastic changes in labor availability. So I think this is a great idea, personally. I think any societal action that provides individuals with equal access to the tools and resources required for them to develop to their fullest expression of their capability is amazing and important. What I really hope for is that robots help us see more clearly the defining line between this never-ending technological quest to be fiscally successful and the diminishing social returns for individual citizens. And I think perhaps the evolution of robotics will help us define the way we value individual societal contribution and bring us closer to equality. Sorry, I know there's a lot to talk about. Are we doing okay? All right, okay, sorry. So now you may have noticed that I haven't talked about AI at all in this conversation. I've really only talked about robots. And the reason for that is I think that when we talk about AI, we have to look at things from a different perspective. So while the same concerns exist and are growing, I think we have to look at it from a different lens, because the fear that we have around AI or around this concept of singularity is founded in something quite different. So yes, right now, do you guys know what machine learning is? Machine learning, okay, so if you don't, machine learning is just basically a process where you have a framework and you show the framework a bunch of data and the machine just learns on its own. So it takes all the information from the data, it learns, and then it takes a subset of the data to see if it's correct or not. So really it's just like a self-educating computer. And the power of machine learning is that repetitive tasks can be done by these machines that are running what we call a narrow AI if they're provided with enough past data. So if there's data to tell the robot how to do it, or there's data to tell the AI how to do it, it'll be able to do it if there's similar situations in the future. And in some cases, the machine AI are way better, or as good or better than human beings at doing these tasks. And it's not just simple repetitive stuff. AI can actually write news stories that are indistinguishable from human writing. So there are occasionally on the internet articles that you'll read that aren't actually written by a human being, they're written by an AI. We also have a big thing happened a couple years ago in the United States where the essay review for a lot of academic tests were being done by AI and not by human beings. And when they compared the scores, the AI actually had the exact same result as the human teachers. So there's a lot of evolution that's taking place with AI. However, the one saving grace of this conversation is that the human mind has the ability to think quickly and with novelty on how to handle situations or problems that it has never seen before. And a machine learning AI can't do that. Machine learning AI is only going to be able to do what you've told it to do. Whereas I've never been to Brazil, but I still know that if I'm going to go outside, I'm not going to walk into the street if there's cars. That's because I have a human brain and I'm not a machine learning that's based on a particular subset of data. So even though that power exists, the real question is, what does that mean for us here in the real world? So we're seeing all of these technological advances. What people are saying is that we're going to be experiencing singularity between 2025 and 2045. So do we know what singularity is? Okay, that's a little bit more. Yeah, so singularity is this idea that we'll create AI and then AI will create better AI. So once we get started on the path, there's going to be this huge upswing in intellect because it will be intellect that's smarter than us that's building even smarter intellect. So we're going to get sort of super intelligence. And it's a little bit scary to think about, but maybe there is less than a single decade until we are able to create the first true general artificial intelligence. Once those intelligences exist, they're going to build on their own, they're going to create super intelligences, and they're going to surpass our thinking and logical abilities. And so that's what the fear of singularity really is. And as we get closer to this concept of singularity becoming a reality, eventually AI is going to turn into an arms race. So we're going to have countries that are racing to get to who can create the AI first, because that intelligence is going to be greater than the human mind, and it'll be an intelligence that will make decisions based on criteria that we cannot even comprehend. So my question is, I don't know if you know, it's Hal. So it's an important question. If country A has access to a superintelligence and it gives us strategic advice, suddenly country A is the new superpower. And there's no way for the rest of us to fight against the logically brilliant ideas this superintelligence can conceptualize. Or worse, what if the superintelligence just decides to take over? I don't need human beings, I'm smarter than all of you. How are we going to control or limit a superintelligence that makes decisions thousands of times faster than we can? It's going to base it on data or concepts that we haven't learned or don't even know exist. Human life becomes meaningless. We're reduced to slaves, and it'll be like the Matrix, or we're just all going to die, basically. So it's sort of science fiction, right? Like you hear this story, it's a really dramatic story. And I think the reason is because this conversation about superintelligence is missing two things. And I think that those two things are emotion and morality. So we'll start with emotion. We have a tendency to divide ourselves into two. What Buddhism would call the duality of mind. And it's so much of a part of the way that we look at the world that it even makes up the way that we talk about the world. So we talk about heart versus mind. We talk about mind over matter. And we have this assumption that our intellect is a function or expression that exists completely externally to what we feel emotionally. We have an assumption that any sort of superintelligence would be pure logic, and emotion cannot and does not exist within the realm of logic. So when we think about this superintelligence, we imagine it will be a thinking machine and not a feeling machine, because we have inside of us a misconception that those are different things. So it's a little bit interesting because when we talk about our interpersonal relationships, we know that those are defined by emotion. The way that we treat each other is defined by largely by emotion. And then we deceive ourselves by saying that our more logical practices, the structure of our government, our laws, our business practices, we tend to think that they reside solely in the realm of logic. But if this were true, we wouldn't have this massive international variance in systems of government. We wouldn't struggle in matters of trade or state alliance if our systems were logical, but they're not. And it's not just the work that I've done in psychology, but also the work that I've done in creating Pepper, this personal emotional robot. It's led me to the understanding that the brain is as much an emotional machine as it is a thinking machine. In fact, the emotions that we feel, even when we feel them so strongly that we call them physical sensations, they're all directed and dictated by the brain. So this emotional system is not separate from our intelligence, but is actually a further extension of it. The beauty of and the complexity of our human reality is that we have multiple intelligence systems running at the same time. So I want to do something real quick, everybody. I want to ask you to turn to the person on your right and on your left. I want you to make eye contact, shake hands, and introduce yourself. Tell each other your names. If you're on the edge, you can do it to the person behind or in front of you. Just everybody introduce yourself real quick. All right. So there's been some interesting research that's been done into the power of even just self-introduction. So in this large room, God forbid, in this large room, if a disaster occurred, you are all now, according to research, 20% more likely to survive. And the reason for that is you have made an emotional connection with the person sitting next to you. They know your name, maybe they know where you're from, and in a point of extreme danger, they will reach out to you because they know who you are, which may not have happened had you not interacted with one another. So, not that I want a disaster to happen at all, but I think it's important to remember that when we make decisions, we don't make decisions solely based on our logical reasoning. We use our heart and we use our emotions. And we know that, oh, I just talked to Michael next to me. Michael, let's get out of here. And you're going to make a decision that's based on that emotional interaction. And it's just this small emotional interaction drastically improves the way that we treat one another, because we are as equally dependent upon our hearts as we are on our minds to make daily decisions. And when, I think the real question is, when we're talking about we're using our hearts, what are we defining that we're depending on? What is that definition? Well, it's the second thing that's missing from our sci-fi superintelligence killer AI overlords. Oh, I missed one, which is morality. So morality is our sense of right and wrong. Our morality is instinctual and internal understandings. It's lessons and learnings taught by our family members. It's experiential behaviors we have interacting with the world around us as we mature. So sometimes these experiences are uncomfortable, sometimes they're painful, sometimes they're really terrible, but they become important keystones in the formation of our personal moral selves. So the experiences that help define this morality that we're talking about are, in essence, emotional experiences. So if you think back to when you were a child, maybe you punched your sister, or you stole something from someone at school, you stole an eraser, you stole a pencil. When we see the pain or the distress on someone else's face, we have this sort of miserable, guilty, emotional reaction. That emotional reaction is informing us of something that we didn't know that we already knew. Not only do we rely on our emotions to tell us what is right or wrong, but we rely on them to tell us what we already knew were right or wrong. We just didn't have a conscious understanding. So in a way, sometimes our emotions are smarter than our brains, at least when we're talking about this difference between logic and emotion. Our emotions are a compass, and they guide us along the unique topography of our individual senses of morality. So my question is, if we can imagine superintelligence that are going to teach us or rule over us or whatever happens, why do we never talk about super morality? Why do we discuss AI evolving into superintelligence that could learn advanced technologies, but we never talk about AI evolving into teachers of advanced concepts of moral thought? And I think it's an important thing to think about. Why do we never have that concept? Why do we never think about that? And I don't have an answer to this rise of the robots concern that people talk to me about all the time. But I'm really glad that the conversation is taking place. It's impossible for humans to stop moving forward, even if large governments ban the development of AI or robotics. Someone somewhere is pushing the boundaries of technology. It's essential that we recognize that information revolution will dramatically alter humanity and the planet Earth, and that we must have critical thinking and awareness around what we are creating and why. The technology we are at the precipice of creating will impact us like nothing else in human history. But as I said before, the dividing line between the never-ending quest for fiscal success and the diminishing social returns to individuals in our society is no longer a line that we need to walk. So I have 4 concepts, just 4, that I would like to talk to you about because I think they will actualize this idea of how technology is going to revolutionize our future and how it will allow for robotics and AI to help humanity evolve. We as innovators have all the power to shift the focus of creating technology to one that promotes, and this is where I talk a little bit about Buddhism, but to promote kinder, more mindful, and an enlightened version of humanity. So we're going to talk about mindfulness and my first concept for the future of robotics, which is mindfulness. So do me a favor, raise your hand if you've ever had in your life a moment where an emotion overpowered every other decision-making system and skill you had and you lost control of your behavior. Whoever has been, yeah, if you're not raising your hand, I think you're lying. So everyone should be raising your hand. Are you listening? You have to raise your hand. So I know that we've definitely had those experiences as a child. Who's had that experience as an adult? Yeah, everybody should be raising your hand to this one too. So tell me, just yell out, what are the emotions that make you lose control? Just yell them out, let me hear. Anger? Fear? Wait, what? So there's all these emotions within us. What I'm really interested in is what is it that allows us to sort of rein back, to take back those emotions and prevent them from taking over us? When the tides of anger are very high, each moment gives us the opportunity to either stay in control or to lose control. So what is it that guides us through each of these moments? What is it that helps us stay centered and calm and connected to all the intelligence systems that we use to make decisions and not get sideswiped by anger or fear? I hope someone said love, because love's an important one. It takes practice, and because it takes practice, it usually means that we fail first, maybe the first time or the second time, or like the third, 100th time, until we have it figured out enough to know the ways that we trick ourselves into doing something that we might later regret. So when we're in high stress situations, there's some really good psychological research that shows that when we're really, really high stress, our hearts beat almost double what they do in our normal resting state. An interesting thing, we stop breathing through our mouths, our noses, and we start breathing through our mouths. And when you breathe through your mouth, the temperature of your brain increases by 0.4 to 0.8%, which actually drastically affects the way that we behave. And so we have all of these things that start happening, and we lose control. We snap, we say something to someone we love, or we anger a coworker, or we jeopardize a business relationship. No one's happier in the end, and all it takes is a single moment to recognize the physical clues that we could take a deep breath, that we could hug our partner, or that we could have a 5-minute break. And in a lot of ways, the major difference between a happy life and an unhappy life is how well we function in those single moments of high emotion. And I think I summarize that as the oops moment. So in Shambhala meditation, the primary goal is to keep your awareness on your breath and maintain an empty mind while you sit still. So you just basically sit and do nothing, and it's actually really boring and it's really hard. It's not an enjoyable practice. I don't know if anybody who here has tried meditation. Who here enjoys meditation? Really? Okay, maybe it's just me. Our minds are tricky, so in a lot of ways we should be meditating, but instead we're sort of thinking about our vacation 7 years ago and that fight we got into, or whatever it is. In meditation, what we do is we have this moment where we say, oops, I'm thinking, but I shouldn't be thinking. I should be meditating. I should not be thinking. For me, because I've lived in Japan for a long time, I think the first 3 years is every 15 times a day, I was having an oops moment where I couldn't go to the bath because I would make a mistake, or I would, who knows. Living in Japan is really complicated. I made a lot of mistakes. And when you have this moment where you make a mistake, when you realize that your actions or your words are not in your best interest or the best interest of the people around you, That oops moment is what gives you the chance to sort of stop and take a breath. And essentially what that oops moment is a moment for education. So my favorite quote is, in some circumstances, a refusal to be defeated is a refusal to be educated. And what the oops moment is about, it's looking at a situation and realizing that we were wrong. But to be wrong, you have to admit that you're wrong, and you have to let your ego take a hit. So what I want to imagine is, what if we had AI-powered robots that lived with us or traveled with us, that watch the way that we behave? They see if our hearts are beating faster, if we're getting heated. They look at the way we move or the way that we speak. And so I just borrowed Pepper for this one, but what is the value of this if we could use a robot to see all of the things that we can't see in the moment to remind us, I'm getting really upset. And the robot says our name, plays a music, plays a chime, does something to remind us that we sort of need to calm down, and gives us the opportunity to experience this oop moment. The robot would give us an immediate understanding, and I call these robots mindfulness monitors. I think the value is immeasurable. And they aren't going to be doing the hard stuff for us. They're just reminding us to say oops. After we say oops, we have to realize that we've made a mistake. We have to find out how to fix our behavior. It's just a great opportunity for us to learn. And I think that the robots of the future are not going to be just giving us information. They are going to be teaching us, because learning is legacy. This is number 2. Learning is the essential part of our human experience. It's how we survive. It's how we are successful in society. It's our profession. It's what we teach our children. And the role that robots and AI will play are not going to be doing our jobs. They're going to have access to information that we don't have access to. They're going to be able to teach us the causal relationships of that data that would otherwise be a mystery, and provide it to us in a way that would help us teach adults and youth. So for anybody out there with children, as your children change schools every year, they get a new teacher, it's sort of a different environment, it's a different learning style, and it can be really upsetting for a child and difficult to progress in learning. So what if we had a robot educator? One student, one robot in the classroom, and the robot would remember every single question that you asked. They would be able to remember every single question, find the connections in the student's learnings, and assess a child's overall intellectual development over the course of their whole lives. And in addition, these educational robots could share all that information back to teachers in the study of pedagogy. So teachers learn from how students learn. Teachers teach teachers how to think and to teach. There's a constant dialogue happening on how to improve the process of education. The data provided by a 12-year consistent teaching assistant would be invaluable. And it's not just primary education, it's any education, it's research. The important part is that we plan out and build smart technology that we are using to teach us. When we go on Google and we go on Wikipedia, yeah, we get data, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're learning or thinking critically. We're just getting the facts. And these kind of robots could really be used to help us think more critically about the world around us. So the next thing, number 3, is all about, kindness. So I live in Japan, as I said, about 6 times, I think. And Japan is an aging society. So the population is decreasing, there's a declining birth rate, and the amount of citizens that are over working age is increasing as well. So what I'm concerned about is the elderly people in Japanese society. What happens to when there's not enough workforce to hire elder care professionals? Who is going to take care of our elder citizens? And the other thing is, we should probably be a little bit more concerned about quality of life for the elderly, especially because the things that our elderly family members are suffering from are easily remedied, and the major causes of decrease in quality of life for our elderly family members are here. The major problem is that they're left alone. That we have older family members that are alone, they're in their homes, they're by themselves. In the US alone, 6 million elderly citizens suffer from late life depression, but only 1% are actually receiving treatment. The first signs of elder depression are they stop doing their daily routine. So they don't open their blinds, they don't go get their mail, they stop eating regular meals, they don't call their friends, they don't keep their appointments. Some research shows that just helping an elderly family member keep their routine prevents the onset of depression by 42%. So what I imagine is a robotic helper that manages the schedules of your elderly family member, that watches their routine, knows that they haven't opened the blinds, knows that they haven't gone to get their mail, knows that they have a doctor's appointment at 3, knows that they're meeting the lady down the street at 5 for drinks. I don't know if they're going to go out drinking. Maybe it's just the early bird special. But social isolation dramatically reduces quality of life. It's a major cause of late life depression and also dementia. And it's not just social relationships. It's not just going to be robots reminding us that we're supposed to meet our friends at 5. Oftentimes our elderly family members forget that they have doctor appointments. So they forget that they need to go see the doctor. And talking about health, a robotic helper could distribute medications. The robot could be a fitness helper, reminding the elderly family member to get up and move around. The robot, if it's like Pepper and has cameras and radars, it can see if an elderly person has collapsed and immediately call for emergency support. A robot would be able to tell an elderly person if they've forgotten to turn off the stove, if they've remembered to pay the light bill. There are thousands of things that a robot could do in the home of our elderly family members. And what's great is elderly people they love Pepper. So I've taken Pepper all over the world. The people that love Pepper the most are women in their 70s and 80s. They cannot get enough. They come back to the SoftBank shop every day to talk to Pepper, and I saw them come to the shop every day to talk to Pepper. It's amazing how open and excited they are in talking to a robot. So like I said, I think it's really important that we take care of our elderly family members, because the way that we treat our elderly citizens is a direct expression of the morality of our culture, which is the last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is that moral robots will promote a more moral society. And the reason I talk about this is because this is a little story. My uncle had a dog, and whenever I would pet the dog would go like this before I pet it. And I asked my uncle, why does he do that? This is when I was a little kid. And my uncle said, well, when I first got the dog, I didn't know how to train dogs, and so I hit it. And because I hit the dog, now even when you go to pet it, it's afraid and it thinks it's going to be hit. So my uncle doesn't hit dogs anymore, but it's a really important story for me, because I realized one time you hit a dog and they remember it for their entire lives. What would be amazing is if we had robots in the home that could function as moral mirrors. So you don't have to you could hit the robot, and then the robot would tell you that it doesn't like to be hit. That way you don't have to hit a dog or your friend. But the important thing is robots have the capacity to watch what we do and let us know if our behaviors are morally correct or not. We get a chance to practice a lot of other skills and decision-making processes, but not so much with morality. Sometimes you just really have to fight with your sister to learn that things are right or things are wrong. So those are my 4 ideas for where I think robots are going to take us. I think a lot of people might call me a techno-optimist. I know that there's a lot of problems in the future of robots and AI. It's not all blue skies, but it's not technology that makes me an optimist. It's humanity. It's human beings. All technology ever is a further extension of our hands and our hearts. Technology doesn't make us bad or good, it just makes it easier for us to be better or worse. And the reason I do this job and hope to create these human-robot interactions that I've talked about today is because I believe that they will help humans be their best. In my time studying Buddhism has taught me anything, it's that by knowing ourselves more deeply and treating each other more kindly, we have within us each moment the capacity for great and wondrous things. It's my commitment to continue to develop and create the technology that makes it easier for us to do these great and wondrous things, to do kind things, to do compassionate things, and to do moral things. And so my final message is to all the other innovators that are out here. It's my hope that we can work together and make this technology together as well. Thank you.